Good morning, everyone. I hope you're enjoying ArabNet so far. We have an exciting lineup of speakers for you this morning. We're going to kick it off with a session on social media marketing, some commerce, and I want to give the stage to Ghassan Qansu. Please.
What is digital education? Is it taking an online course? Is it registering yourself in a distance learning course at some university? Is it sitting for a computer-based exam, like a GMAT or a TOEFL? Is it the use of interactive whiteboards in a classroom? Is it the use of tablet technology for students in high school or at university? Well, I find that the question isn't really so much what digital education is, but rather how. And what I feel is important is really defining a digital strategy. It's a digital strategy for an institution that helps it achieve its pedagogic objectives and one that really enhances the learning experience for learners in that community. What I hope to do over the next 15 minutes is really tell you what that really means to us as an organization and how we've gone about defining that the digital strategy and how we've gone about implementing it at our organization. A little background as to where I come from. SABIS, or Shweifat, or Charlie Saad, as some might know it, really started its journey back in 1886. It started as a small school in a silk factory in the village of Shweifat. It served a community of 26 learners, all girls at the time, and very quickly we found that the people of the village were very upset in that the girls of the village were really growing up to be much smarter than the boys, and that was something they would not accept. And so very quickly the school became co-educational, and 130 years on, the organization today caters for some 65,000 students worldwide, in 15 different countries on 4 different continents. As far west as schools in the US, in Phoenix, Arizona. We have 12 campuses in the United States. Schools in Europe, in the UK and Germany. Moving on to the Middle East, in most of the Gulf states, and as far east as Lahore in Pakistan. SABIS operates both public and private schools. So we have governments with contracts with governments, specifically in the United States. They're called charter schools. And in this part of the world, they're known as PPPs, or public-private partnerships. And so the experience really comes in on both public and private sectors. Our IT initiatives really span back the past 5 decades, and development really has been in trying to enhance education across different sectors and different areas of the school. So from school management, all the way through to curriculum delivery, all the way through to assessing how well curriculum has been learned. And really, this is going to be the focus of what I'm going to talk about this morning. And so when talking about tech initiatives and how we can improve on any education institution, you really try to go back and think about how to improve on the learning process. And the learning process is at the heart of any education institution. Our learning process looks something like this. It starts with the teaching and learning. And I'd really like to focus on the learning point, not so much the teaching. It's not what you actually taught in a classroom that counts. It's what students have actually learned. And that really is the test. And so to really make sure that that has been effective, you look at the assessment piece to make sure that you can gauge that. And the assessment is only as good as its results and what that means to the institution. And so looking at the analysis and the feedback that you get from these results, you put that back into the learning process, back into the classroom, into the teaching and learning, and you really close that loop full cycle. And so to put this in a little more context, what I thought I'd do is show you how each of those different components can be enhanced with the use of digital technology, and at least how we've done it in our organization. At the teaching and the learning levels, you're really dealing with instructional pieces initially. So what traditionally students have as textbooks, or other ancillary materials. This is the natural step into moving into ebook technology, into looking at interactive features, and really providing a paperless solution for schools. And that today is where essentially the future is heading. If you combine that with the use of interactive whiteboards, now that's something that we've been rolling out for the past about 10 years. It really improves on the instructional piece in a classroom. It really improves on how delivery is impacted, what teachers actually have at their disposal to make sure that they're delivering instruction correctly. In our setting, that really has been a blessing because we have a good number of campuses around the world. And to really make sure that quality exists in all of these different campuses, you need to make sure that you standardize instruction. And so the use of interactive whiteboards have really been instrumental in trying to get that achievable. You then connect that piece with what students are receiving in that classroom. So all of the responses that they provide in a classroom are also digitized. It connects with the instructional piece. That's something that we've been working on for the past couple of years. And what it does really is allow for a computerized response at the fingertips of teachers in the classroom. So you can really tell what percentage of students have answered a particular activity correctly. You can decide how to gauge instruction based on those results automatically in the classroom. And you can really decide what kind of instructional piece to use in the classroom based on those results. So it gives you full clarity inside that classroom. Connecting with the assessment piece, and here what we have in our system is really computerized testing halls. These really allow for students to take their exams online. They take them on the computers. It really allows for the micro testing as well as the macro testing of information. This can be done weekly or periodically. The advantages here, of course, is that you automatically correct things on the spot. You're able to tell students exactly where their gaps are in that testing session, and you transform that testing session into a learning session again. So at the end of that assessment piece, you then combine the learning component by allowing students to go back and really focus learning on the gaps that have just been identified. And that really happens in a tested setting. You know, gone are the days when in our time, you know, you'd get the exam back a week or 2 weeks later, you'd forgotten what the information was on there in the first place, what you had responded, and you really missed an opportunity to deal with issues there, right there on the spot. And so that really has allowed us to do quite a number of things. In addition to, of course, measuring how much time every activity has taken, looking at that piece and deciding how to improve on question setting, test banks, and so on. The recent thing that's also been made available now with the technology is that you can focus in and hone in on individual learning gaps. So when students go home, they can connect to the learning portal, they can get online, and really connect with the results that we have from school. So on the spot, they can go in, do some practice, they know where their gaps are, where their issues are, and they can go back and try to address them. And to bring it full circle, there's also a suite of reports and analytics that happen at the school-based level. It happens at the regional levels to help make sure the regional schools are doing well, and of course at the corporate level. Now, I can probably go into each of these, you know, as a case study on their own. Unfortunately, I don't have the time this morning, and what I'll try and do is focus on ebooks and the ebook initiatives that have been taking place recently. Before doing that, though, I would like to share with you what an interactive whiteboard lesson would look like. And now remember, this is what the teachers would have at their disposals. It's an interactive whiteboard. I'm sure many of you have seen them. They're a big screen, response to user input. Nowadays, it's becoming smart TVs. That's what seems to be where the technology is going. And what we do at the corporate level, because we design curriculum ourselves, we develop our own intellectual property, we're able to then use that and place all of the information on the interactive boards. So a particular 4th grade science lesson will look something like this. Learning points are automatically identified for the teachers in class. They can click on a particular activity. It takes them to the page of the book that's relevant to instruct. They have, of course, features such as images, slideshows, and so on. They can also connect to tools such as interactive media. And so imagine yourself in a fourth grade classroom learning about globes, and then suddenly this thing comes up.
Description of a globe. A globe is a sphere or a ball with a map of the Earth on its surface. It shows the relative size, shape, and position of land and bodies of water. Earth's equator is an imaginary circular line that goes all around Earth. The equator is found midway between the North and South poles. The equator is the starting line for measuring latitude. Lines of latitude are imaginary circular lines around Earth that are parallel
Right,
to...
so you get the idea. So there are things that you can develop, interactive features, multimedia, videos, that really bring the information up to life. And it's by taking that information and posting it in this kind of format is that you've allowed every teacher to have these features in with them and present them to a class. Of course, you have the standard features. You can mark up the pages, you can highlight, you can take notes. These are things that you can do in interactive whiteboard. But more importantly for us, it's really been a way to gauge the learning methodology as well. And so you find a notice there saying this is a teach in a class practice. So it tells the instructor you're supposed to teach this piece, interact with the students on it, and when you're done, there's an individual practice that needs to happen. So this is where students on their own demonstrate performance and they know that they've actually done this well. A feature that teachers most likely enjoy. The answers are always there. It helps on having to solve things on the spot, maybe even making some mistakes. And of course, once things are done, takes them back to the learning points, and they can check off the point that they've done. So it really, as far as we're concerned, it brings about consistency in delivery, and it makes sure that we can have quality across different classes of different campuses in different parts of the world. All right, so that was the interactive whiteboard, that piece that helps teachers in a classroom. I'll take the remaining time and look at how the ebook initiatives have been launched at our organization. Now, when deciding to go with something like an ebook initiative, there are a number of factors you have to consider. The idea of introducing technology simply for the sake of technology is not really the objective. You really want to see the added value and try to measure what that is in any institution. And so the things you have to keep in mind as well are that you're dealing with a community of learners who really are a lot smarter than we are. They have worked with the technology, they have tablets at home most likely, they're on their PlayStations, their mobile phones, they're on social media. They really know a whole lot more about it than we do. And I think if our kids don't end up being smarter than we are, then we've really done something wrong in terms of evolution. So we have to expect that as far as the learner in that classroom. Things that we have to consider are the types of hardware. Do you go with a tablet solution? Do you go with a laptop, a netbook? I mean, all sorts of technologies are available. And in some cases, we've skipped certain generations, certain technologies. They no longer exist. So at what point do you decide to go with one piece of hardware or another? That decision is strongly influenced by the kind of software you want to use. So do you go with an iOS, which is quite limited in terms of connectivity, but quite reliable? Do you go with an Android solution that's open source? Do you go with a Microsoft-based solution? These are things you have to consider as well as the hardware. Do you have an online solution where you're streaming live? No need to store documents and books on your machine? Or do you have an offline solution where you can store those books on your machine and really access them at any time you want without an internet connection? These are questions you have to ask. How about the users? And I'm focusing on administration and teachers. Some will be comfortable with it, some will not. You've really got to keep in mind to include a training feature in there and make sure they're always keeping those tools sharp. What kind of content do you offer? Offering too much content, too much interactivity is a problem. It's distracting. Offering too little, again, just presents a simple flip book, and I think students might not get motivated enough given their expectation level. And of course, what impact does that have on a classroom? All of a sudden, you're telling teachers, throw these tablets in, let's see what students do when they have them in the classroom. All of a sudden, they're taking photos, they're sharing on Facebook, they're doing all sorts of things. How do you deal with those issues? Well, I can tell you, you deal with them with some difficulty, but you end up really finding ways of making this project successful. And so what this has meant for us, at least we've taken it relatively slowly. We decided to implement the solution in 4 campuses. We ran a pilot that did certain grade levels, not the whole K-12 spectrum, and really focused our efforts on measuring and seeing how the rollout happened at those campuses. We had very early discussions with stakeholders. Really set the expectations that the parents know what was expected of them, the students, the community of learners, teachers, administration, and really explain to them what the objectives were, making sure we have their buy-in. We also chose the platform that was compatible with our LMS. So we do have a lot of software that we've developed as an organization. We needed to make sure that whatever we develop as an ebook and content managed development would really integrate with the other components that we have. And so we did decide to go with an Android solution. It was open source, allowed us to connect with our different software modules and applications, and that was quite successful for us. And then came the time to decide what kind of e-features. Again, there's a wide spectrum to choose from, and because we develop our own curriculum, we have our own books and ancillary material, we were able to really decide what has impact in a classroom, and what is it that a student would benefit from, and what adds value. So just to take you through what things look like, a student would open up their library of books. This has all of the books connected to the courses that they've signed up to. This, of course, connects with the software management system at the school, connects with the web platform. They're allowed to then download their books off our web servers. In addition to the typical features, they can mark up, they can highlight, they can add notes with a stylus if they choose to. They can bookmark pages for quick references. That's a nice feature we found they enjoyed. Things like glossary terms were identified, so any word that a student comes across, they're not familiar with it, they click on it, it shows you the definition in that glossary. You could have it translated, you could have it spoken out to you. These are things that really allow to have a native speaker in foreign languages if they're learning these. It allows them to get access to somebody speaking out those words. We embedded a certain number of videos and animations, like the ones that you saw earlier. Again, this was done by our academic development teams. They really decided what concepts were difficult to see just on plain paper, and they did the storyboards, worked with a team of animators, and really went about and developed the content for those books. We added audio or audiobooks for certain readers. This was a great feature. We had interactive activities where students would answer automatically on the ebook, tells you if it's right or wrong, and shows you the right and wrong solutions. You could link back to prerequisites. So if I'm reading something, but I'm not really sure where I'm going with it, you can take them back to another book or another piece of information that has those concepts that they need to know. You could connect to other books if you needed to. This was a nice feature between textbooks and workbooks. Web links for extra information. Also had culture connections. So if they're reading about something and they want to know about a geographic connection, a history connection, literature, linguistic, all of those things were in there. And so what we really tried to do is think of what improves on those instructional pieces, what allows students to have a better experience, a more motivated experience, and one that would allow them and want them to really take ownership of their own learning. This, as I said, really integrated with the existing pieces that we have. That content that was developed has to be embedded with the assessment piece, with the pieces available online for their viewing pleasure at home. And of course, we had regular training sessions. This really started very early. Those who needed more sessions, those were scheduled for. And what we found very helpful is that the students themselves did most of the support. Schools were really concerned that they would have had to employ an IT person just to deal with the ebook issues, which really wasn't the case. We really identified certain prefects that volunteered to be your go-to tech guys, and they really helped other students in dealing with their issues. And that really helped us really troubleshoot most of the issues around them. This was coupled with a lot of observations. We had focus groups with students to see what they enjoyed about the project, what they didn't, what kind of features were helpful. And really a lot of those comments drove the next set of developments. And this was something that actually was quite helpful to us. And all in all, it was quite a successful project. It still is. We'll see more schools, more campuses roll this out over the next year or so. And really, you do expect to see that classroom of the future or the schools of the future much sooner than we can expect. I don't know if many of you have children that go to school or of school age. You're probably going to be seeing this a lot more. And probably gone are the days of the many, many textbooks being carried on in backpacks for students and finding their way back and forth between school and home. So that really is something that I think we're going to see quite a change in. So to really go back to what digital education is, I guess it's one or a combination of the elements that I described here this morning. It's one that's based on a sound pedagogical philosophy, and through a clear digital strategy, I think will enhance every step of the learning process. Thank you. We have time for some questions and answers.
Hello.
Morning.
First of all, I really like this. It's sort of what everybody's thinking and why education is not going towards this. But I'd like to take things a little bit further. Considering that today the teacher, the way he gives a class, is really dependent on a lot of things. For example, his mood for the day, his skill level, all of that, all of these things. Can't all of these factors be put in a video so that the video is always the best in class of delivering a lesson? And considering if we go to that, what would be the role of the teacher in digital education?
Great question. And I think it's definitely things that we're considering the whole time, given that we're employing over some 5,000 teachers. Can you guarantee that they come in the morning not having fought with their spouse and have their kids keep them up all night because they were ill, and walk into a classroom of 40 kids and really be as sparky and as engaged as possible? I don't think we can expect that at all. You can capture the best classroom, absolutely. The worry that you always have is how much video do you have, or interaction, multimedia, versus your traditional reading that students must go through. This has always been a question that we're trying to balance out. Even as you introduce multimedia and other features, you don't want students to lose out on the important skill of reading. You know, when they get to different situations, either at college or anywhere in their life, they're going to be expected to read and be able to read and understand thoroughly. So you want to really mix the different instructional strategies. So you do want to have certain videos that maybe have the perfect classroom. You do want them to read and study on their own and have the program really gauge their learning step by step. And as needed, maybe create a discussion session where they can learn from their peers, they can pick up from that instructor in the classroom and really help them moderate what a classroom would look like. So I would say it's a mix of all these three things. I don't see the day that, or at least not just yet, where we completely eliminate the role of that teacher, but maybe have them as moderator and you know, tracking the progress within a classroom.
I would like to know if you have measured
does someone introduce me, or do I go up and introduce myself?
Perspective. How did you see the difference between, like, let's say, old school students and the digital era students? Did you measure, or did you find some difference?
Right. Again, interesting question. There were some measurements that we did, and really it's a matter of what measure do you use. So we did have a control group where certain classrooms did not have ebooks and did not have the technology in there, and we assessed the results that they had at the end of the week or at the end of the month. And we had classrooms where we did have them use the technology. We also combined that with some subjective feedback, getting their comments and seeing what their experiences were like. While it is still early days, we did see a peak with certain numbers of students who were actually more motivated to learn. to read through information,
Tweet
and their
live tweet.
fundamental knowledge
Hashtag couple
definitely
roll.
increased.
Hashtag.
I can't say that this was a
Proper pictures,
swiping
eh?
statement, but it definitely showed certain areas where those were increased. And so as far as having positive results, those were
Just-
shown.
just,
As I say, it's still
co-founder and
early
marketing
days.
manager.
I wouldn't
Our
jump to the
co-founder and
conclusion
marketing
just yet in
manager,
saying
Al-Qasim Al-Haddad,
digital works much
speaking
better than
live at
traditional.
ArabNet.
All of the intuitive sense tells us it will. I think it's going to create better avenues for students. And the intrinsic data is definitely
Okay,
in
you
that
have to coach
direction.
me on
So it's not conclusive just yet, but it's definitely in the right direction.
humanizing the brand
Hope that answers your question.
as a must.
Okay, well, thank
لا،
you very much.
آخر شيء. ما بعرف. Tweet something first.